All right, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the dimensions of the lines and the circles on the actual guitar and how I managed to map that information that we've seen in the psychological literature, which talks about a ratio of 1.4 to 1 between the width of the line and the width of the circles. I looked around to see what I could find in terms of tapes that would present me that ratio. So in other words, I needed a circle that was 1.4 times the width of the line. And it turned out that the only combination of circle tapes, so masking tapes for circles and masking tapes for lines, the only combo that worked was 3/8 inch for the circles and 1/4 inch for the lines. And that worked out pretty well, so that when the lines crossed one another, the circle just covered where the two lines met. So you didn't quite see this, right? The circle kind of cuts it off. I then had to decide, how many of these circles and cross combinations do I want on the guitar? So I came up with an idea of that just by fiddling around with superimposing the pattern on an image of a guitar on my laptop. And I decided that what I wanted to have was effectively a circle every 1.25 inches. So the center of the circle is an 1.25 inch apart. All right, and that means that the tapes have to be set such that there's 1/8 inch here, 1/8 inch here, plus the space in between gives you your 1.25 inches, and that means that you'll effectively have squares that are 1 inch, 1 inch of blackness between the red lines that I'm going to have that way and also this way. And to map that onto the guitar, I've taken some acetate, which is it's a clear plastic that was used on with overhead projectors to demonstrate things on the screen for children in classrooms, but is also used wherever courtrooms are still using physical documents as covers for court documents. That's why I have them. So I started by taking my acetate and I marked out along the edge here a number of 1.25 inches, okay? Because the 1.25 inches, again, that's the distance between here and here. It's 1 square plus the width of the tape is 1.25 inches. So if we go to the center of the tape, we go to the center of the tape here, it's still 1.25 inches. And so I had to mark 1.25 inches. I have to do that all along this here. So I say, okay, there's 1.25 inches there. That's 1.25 inches there. That's 1.25 inches there. And so on until we get to the other end of the page. And then to do the same thing this way. So starting with the edge, I'd have to measure up first. What I normally want to do is measure, because I've measured 1.25 inches there. Before I start drawing any lines, I want to measure 1.25 inches over here so that my lines are parallel to the edges of the material. And so I put that there. And I can make the same lines all the way along. And so on, up the edge of the page, and then just cut across. So lining those up, best I can anyway. Never going to be absolutely perfect, but it doesn't need to be really. I can then draw a line, and I can do that all the way up until I get to the top. I'm not going to do it all right now. And then I could do the lines this way, again, 1.25 inches apart. So starting at the top over here, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter, and so on. And the same on the other side, starting from that edge going this way. Inch and a quarter, inch and a quarter. Oh, make sure you don't slide your acetate when you're doing it. Where are we here? Oh, I slowed it. Okay, there we go. So 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches, 1.25 and so on. And then we can flip the acetate, line up our dots best we can, draw a line, draw a line, and so on. And then we will have on the entire page a cross-hatch pattern that can be laid on the guitar and that will allow us then, hopefully, to know exactly where the centers of every circle are, because the circles are going to be the 3/8" circles that are going to be on, here. And it will also then allow us to know where our tapes are going to be, because our tapes are going to lie with the center of the tape, like so, okay? Same here. Now, of course, I'm not going to use this particular piece of acetate. I've already wrecked it, but that's the manner in which I'm going to prepare one piece of acetate so that I can then lay it out on the guitar and mark the guitar. All right, so here's the result of just using that plastic sheet and using a ruler. I've basically created a grid pattern where the space between each line, whether this way or that way, horizontally or vertically, is 1.25 inches. So what I'm going to be doing is, I believe this will work, taking some sticky material like Mac Tack or whatever you want to call it, that you sometimes use to hold posters up in your dorm room, put a little tiny bit of it right on each intersection, and then take the circular painter's tape circles that I've got, stick the non-sticky side down onto the Mac Tack, and then pull the backings off of each of the circles so that the sticky part of the circle is exposed, and then take the sheet, flip it over, line it up where I want it on the guitar, press it down and let the circles stick to the guitar. I'll apply pressure at each of the intersections to make sure the sticky part of the circle is down good and tight to the guitar. And then gently I'll try and remove the Mac Tack from the non-sticky side of the circles. It's an experiment. Hopefully it'll work. All right, so I've got this blue adhesive putty that I got at my local Staples office supply place. And we're going to see if we can make use of this in conjunction with the grid pattern that I've put together, and in conjunction with the circular dots that were going to be applied to the guitar. So before we do that, I want to see what is stickier, the adhesive putty or the removable stickers. The removable, you could think of these as painter's tape. It's kind of the same principle. It's for high heat applications, but I think it's going to have similar properties to paper painter's tape. So we'll see. Comes in a strip. You can see those of circles, 3/8" circles. And I'm going to test how well it sticks to, I'm just going to use cardboard for the time being. I'm going to assume that this has got a similar surface to a painted guitar, just for the purposes of seeing whether this blue putty can pull the circle off of the guitar, or whether it's not got that adhesion. If it doesn't, I'm better off. I don't want a lot of adhesion. I just want a little bit of stickiness so that I can hold the dot onto the grid while I'm laying it down on top of the guitar. So I'm going to take a pinch of this blue putty. I'm going to put it right on an intersection of two lines. like so. This is the side of the, this is the tape side. This is the part, the side that has the circles that can be removed from it. So I'm going to put the circle side down on top of the blue dot. And I'm going to see if I then can pull it off. I can't. Okay, good. With that bit of blue adhesive putty on the grid, I'm going to cut one of these painter's tape circles. This is the sticky side, and it's the side that I want to attach to the guitar. This is just the backing part that keeps the sticky side from sticking to everything. I'm going to put that on the grid at about the center, as close to the center as I can make it, like that. Then I'm going to remove the backing plastic, if I can. And it looks like it's going to be not as easy as I'd hoped. I'm going to have to press the circle onto that blue putty a little harder. So I've got something to work with. There we go. Okay. Now the sticky side of the circle is up. I'm going to apply it as though this is the guitar. Press down. And see whether the circle will remain on the cardboard, or whether it's going to be pulled off of the cardboard by the blue putty. Ah, success. Okay. All right, well, let's give it a try now on the guitar. So we've got the guitar in place, and I'm going to run a test with just one spot on the guitar to see if, as the cardboard, the circle will stay attached to the guitar and not to the blue putty. Still has the backer on it. And I'm going to take my grid pattern, apply the circle, center it as best I can, press it on, take the backer off. Success. And I think, first of all, we want to find out where we want these to go, and I want there to be dots down the center. So that they'll line up with the dots on the neck. Let's see if I can pull this off. And I can. Good. All right, this approach is going to work. So now what I think I'm going to do is put blue dots of that putty on each of these intersections, and then I'm going to apply a circle to each of them. And then I'll come back and I'll lay them on top. I'll probably apply one row at a time rather than a whole sheet worth. And that should, I'll use that one as a guide. All right, so I've gotten this more or less lined up. Let me just double check that. There we go. And we're going to go through the center of the guitar. So I'm going to line that line up so it's between the 3rd and 4th screw holes. That's the alignment. So there's going to be a dot there, a dot there, a dot there, a dot there. There also will be a dot here, but I'm going to have to move everything down before I can, because I've run out of grid, before I can add that last dot. All right, we'll add some dots. We've got 4 more here. So I'm going to remove the plastic. This is fairly painstaking. Okay, now we've got 4 sticky dots there. Turning over the sheet, we've got to line it up with that one, no, that one right there. We're lining it up with that one, there we go. And we want to be in the center of that dot and between the 3rd and 4th holes. And we're going to cross our fingers and hope that we can pull the blue putty off of the 4 dots. Whew, okay. Success. Now for the rest of the guitar. All right, that's better. All right, so we've got 4 rows on now. It's coming along pretty well. It's not perfect. It's not perfect. I can't say exactly why, but the dots won't perfectly line up, even though the grid I think is perfect. I think it's just that, you know, getting the circle placed exactly square in the middle of an intersection of 2 lines, applying it to the guitar and hoping that it doesn't move any when you're applying it to, there's a lot of ifs and hopes and etc. in there. But I don't think it's going to matter. There's the 1/4 inch tape that's going to lay on top of this when we do the next color isn't as wide as these circles are, you know, broad. So there will be a little bit of room to wiggle, I think. And it's also a material that's got a bit of flex to it. So to the extent that things aren't perfectly lined up, I think it won't matter that much. But it's coming along. It's as much as I could expect from this imperfect process. And I'm just going to continue and do the rest of the guitar. All right, so we've got the dots on the face of the guitar. This has taken probably 1.5 hours to 2 hours, believe it or not. It's very painstaking. But I'm happy so far with the result. Now, whether they're going to be as easy to come off as they were to go on, that's another question. But I guess I'll go to the back now. I'm going to do the back. I'm going to try and do a transition that keeps the spacing the same as we go around, so that, for example, over here, I'll have a dot perhaps. It's going to be tricky though. I'm going to have to make some, well, I think what I'll do is I'll come on a straight line, do 1 line all the way around, and then I will, no, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this line here, I'm going to take it around the back, continue it that way on the back, and then move out from the center of the back. I think that's probably the best way to do it. Because there's, you know, there's the curvature of the guitar and visual illusions that are caused by just by curving here and etc. I'll leave the inner parts or the side of the guitar till last, and I'll just make judgment calls based on where the dots are on the front and on the back. All right, onto the back. Okay, so the question is how to transition this grid over to the back. And I think the way I'm going to do it, as I said, I'm going to go around this way, but I want to have, when I get to the other side, I don't want it to be out of kilter this way. So what I think I'm going to do is try this. I've made a patch of 9. That'll be for the other side. I've got grips here, not on the, not at the intersections, but just in the middles, so they aren't sticking to the green dots on the front of this. And I'm going to line this up so that, right about there, I think, so that when I wrap this plastic around to the other side, at least some of these dots, I think I'll go one over like that, will give me a place to put lines, or to put dots rather. So the question is where to, right about there, I think. So just some glops of the blue stuff, touching the white paint, not touching the green dots. Then I'll wrap this plastic around. Like so. And I'll attempt, I'll use this as the center line. Just temporarily pushing it down for now. I can check to see whether I've got a straight line up the middle. I'm going to risk using a metal ruler. I don't think it's quite straight. That's looking pretty straight to me. So I'm going to press down. And I'm going to make a mark where I know there's not going to be a dot. Okay, I think best would be a marker. I'm going to use a Sharpie actually. Okay, I'm going to take the plastic off of the face of the guitar. One other check though, let's just see. I want to see if I've got a lining up of these lines with the lines on the front. And the way I can do that is by taking another piece of this plastic. I'll tack this one on. I'm going to take my ruler. That's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. All I want to be able to do is determine whether this one is lined up with the top, and I can see it is not. Now that might be the inevitable result of just the thickness of the guitar, meaning that I can't line them up, which means I might have to just put lines that are on a bit of a diagonal. The other option would be moving these dots this way so that I have straight lines this way. I think that would be my preferred approach, but I'd have to be very careful to mark the guitar. I think that's where we're at. That's as close as I'm going to get it. I've got other tools to help me. don't want to change the height of the lines or the position of the lines that way. So I've just marked on the inset of the whammy bar route where these lines go. And I think I can now pull these off. I'm going to take these ones, move them over here. And I'm going to put dots on these. So first I'm just going to put them on the tack. I'm not going to center them yet. All right, and now I can get about the business of centering them on the intersections, which is just done by eye. I mean, there's no mathematics to this part, and this is why there's some imprecision in how they line up. But this is a rock and roll guitar, not a progressive rock guitar, I suppose. All right, so we've got 9 on there. Interestingly, if you're doing this kind of work, that blue sticky tack stuff, you want to make sure that it goes all the way, at least all the way to the edge of the circle that the circle sticker that you're peeling off, because otherwise it won't catch the edge and the circle will just come right off of blue stuff. So I've tried in every case to put a little bit of edge, bring the blue to the edge under the sticker, and then I'll peel from the part, I don't know if you can see that, but I'll peel from the part that seems most to cover the edge of the sticker. So we have success there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but that's success. That's 9 dots. We can line these up. And that's about as close as I'm going to get. Now these should come off pretty easily. Well, that one didn't. Press them down when we're done. Remove that blue. Okay, I think we've got a pretty good starting point from which to then make our grid pattern on the back, and hopefully it'll line up nicely with the front. All right, so this has taken probably the better part of 4 hours to get all the dots on. But I've got them all on the back now. I'm not doing the sides. I think I'm going to do something different with the sides. There's maybe 1 or 2 right there, but and then there's the front. So now I have to set up the tent again, put the horse in, the spin twist on the horse, and then this whole thing is going to get painted with 3 coats of cardinal red. So let's go do that now. All right, so here's the guitar in the paint booth. The green dots are where the white's going to remain. And I'm going to spray over that with red, cardinal red. 3 coats. Okay, I'm losing the light, so I put a couple lights into the paint tent. This is the 3rd and final coat. My attempt to video the 2nd coat didn't work out so well. Not that you can see a lot through this plastic screen, but this will be the final coat. And then we'll let it sit for an hour, and then we'll take the guitar out, bring it inside, and deflate the tent. So for putting these dots on, I forgot to mention, these are actually, painter's masking tape, but they are not made of paper. They're made by a company called High Temp Masking Supply, and they're polyester masking discs in this case. These are the circles that we put on the guitar last week. It's been a week now. The guitar paint, the paint on the guitar has pretty much dried and hardened. I mean, it dries almost immediately, frankly, but I'm more confident now that it's, I guess, cured, if that's the right word for this kind of paint, nitrocellulose. So today, what we're going to do is put the tape on for the lines that go over top of and cross over the dots before painting the whole guitar black. And so that when those lines are removed, we'll have red lines within the black background. And when we remove the dots, last and not least, we'll end up with white dots over top of the intersecting lines. So let's get going on that. I think what I'll do is I'll start on the back. If I make a mistake on the back, that at least I can live with. Just until I get the hang of it. All right, so I think what I'll do is start with a short line. You'll see right here I've picked a little of the paint off. That green that you see is the actual painter's tape. I think what I'll do, because this is going to be where the neck plate is, I'll start here and just run a line to here, just as a test. It's probably the least damage I can do. In fact, before I even do that, I'm going to take my grid pattern, and I'm going to take a bit of this painter's tape just to get a sense of how it feels in my hands and how to operate it. I can already see it's a bit stretchy, spongy. Okay, so something along like that I think will work just fine. Remember, I'm not going to be putting it on a line, I'm putting it on cross dots. It's not too tacky, it's just enough to hold on. So it's proper painter's tape. It's not really sticky stuff that's going to pull the paint off when I remove the tape. First go across. Now this is going to be tricky. This loop is too large to deal with. It's in the way. So I'm going to cut pieces of tape off and just see if I can do it that way. Luckily it does not seem to curl up or do anything unfriendly, so that's good. And I want to make sure this lies so the bit of the circle is on each side of the tape. The dots aren't exactly perfectly aligned, so but this is allowing me to move the tape about, even if it does touch down on the guitar a bit, without pulling the paint off. I can lift the tape back up and reposition it, so that's good. Okay, so we've got our first line, and that represents our first red stripe. So to demonstrate what has to happen at each intersection, let's do one this way. We'll use this dot here as an example. Crucial dot here is this one right here, because we're trying to line this line up so that it meets the circle. So just a tad of the circle is available. There we go. On that side. Now I'm going to redo this side. The dots, as I say, they're not exactly perfectly aligned. They're off by maybe a half a millimeter or a millimeter in some cases. So I have to sort of make sure I do each dot individually, just to do a little bit of adjustment to make sure that the line sits as closely as possible to the middle of the circle. I don't like this one right here. I'm going to redo that. And I can already see, here's what's happened here. The red paint on top of the green dot has lifted off with this paint. So I might very well find that I'm cleaning off the dots when I'm pulling the tape off, this blue tape off. Just don't want to pull any of the red paint off of the guitar itself. Okay. Now I can go back to this dot, good. And to this dot, good. Nope. There. All right. Now in terms of lining it up with the front of the guitar, let's just turn it over and see where we're at. Now where it's here, I don't think I want to have the line come across. I'm going to leave this line, I'm just going to lead it right to the edge here. I'm not going to bring it across to the top. I don't want to create a swirly, curvy type situation, so I think I'll cut it off right about the middle of that. And we'll match it up later. All right. So I'm just going to continue the process. There's no sense in me filming the entire thing, but we'll do intermittent updates. All right, so we've got our, I guess we can call them horizontal lines on the back. The only problem I see, really, that's kind of obvious, is over here, where the dots just didn't line up. I think that's because of the curvature of the guitar right there. The dots are on the curve and it just makes things a bit wonky, but it's the back of the guitar, first of all. And second of all, you know, it's a guitar, it's rock and roll. It's not meant to be something that's absolutely perfect. If it were, I don't think that'd be very rock and roll at all. Anyway, I think we'll do the cross hatching now before switching it over and doing the front. I'm gonna put on my reading glasses for this because the idea is to make these lines cross in a way that they're sort of, as best you can, centered in the middle of the circle so that there's a little tiny bit of circle that's still there, right where the intersections happen. We'll see how it all works out, but at least with the glasses on. Oh, and I'm going to increase the amount of light I have to bear on the subject so I can get a bit better view of where those circles are. I'm going to start at the end. Just lightly tack it on. Have to make adjustments to the line to make up for the imperfections in the placement of this circles. Make sure the tape presses down against the paint all the way along the line. And I'm taking the tape to about the midpoint on the edge of the guitar. I think with the edge of the guitar, I might do a different kind of pattern or something, just so that I can make up for the fact that the lines on the back are not necessarily going to line up with the lines on the front. Get that off about there. And again, because the guitar has curves, the lines on the sides want to do all kinds of weird changes of direction. So you just have to roll with it. All right, let's keep going. Just two things. I didn't see any point in wasting all this tape in here, like 2 or 3 inches of tape. So I'm doing this part and then just a little bit of a line here. But then the question is, how do you make sure that the line is the right orientation? So all I'm doing is I'm taking my grid that we used to lay out the dots, laying that up against the side of the tape like that, lying it up that way, and then coming over with the tape this way, lining it up with the edge of the plastic, like so. That seems to be doing a good job. Now, as I was doing this, thinking about how to do this, I was also thinking about, you know, how it's kind of enjoyable, and, you know, one could be playing guitar, but what if you're on the road and you've been playing guitar every night for 100 nights or something like that, and you're going absolutely stir crazy. Maybe you're in your bus or in a hotel room, and you just don't know what to do with yourself. You don't want to read a book, you don't want to watch any more TV or listen to any music. I can tell you that this process is, for me anyway, a lot of fun. It's creative in the sense that you know, you're making decisions constantly about how to deal with things like curves and etc., and coming up with solutions. I can see how, therefore, you know, Jimi Hendrix and George Harrison, how they may have just made their custom guitars, the ones they painted themselves, out of a desire to fill some time, not to be so bored, and maybe to try something creative that wasn't music itself, but some other escape from the day-to-day. I can easily see that now. I was just thinking, you know, I don't want to leave these pieces of tape suspended over the open areas because, of course, if they catch on anything, they could rip the paint right off of the guitar. So, or sorry, the tape right off the guitar and ruin the layout. So I'm going to chop them. I'm just going to make sure each of these lines is pressed down against the paint so that I don't have any bleed from the black paint that's going to go on next. So I'm just pressing down, making sure I get rid of any air bubbles if I can do so. Not always going to be able to do so, but they don't matter as much as long as they're in the middle of the tape instead of on the edge where the line's being formed. All right, let's get going on the front. All right, we've got all the vertical lines on there. Now we'll just do the horizontals and we'll be ready to paint. All right, that's it. We've got all of the lines on. We've got all the dots on. Can't see the dots right now. And it's time to paint. I'm just going to make sure I've got all the tape down, you know, making good contact with the red paint, and then we'll take it outside and give it the first coat of black. All right, we've got the guitar all taped up, ready to roll the black on. I'm not going to rip at the edges. I'm going to do something special with that later, I think, and the back. And there we go. So let's get painting. We're going to do the black. After we do the black 3 coats, there will be, of course, we'll be putting clear coat on in a week or so. But before putting the clear coat on, we're going to pull off the tape, both the lines and the dots. That'll probably be next week, but let's get going on the black. Okay, third and final coat.